Welcome in everyone to the Larsonland podcast. I'm your host Sawyer Hill, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Dylan Bradshaw. We come in here every single week and talk about all things involving the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Young Money Kyle Larson. Dylan, pretty. I thought it was a controversial race out at Bristol yesterday, but after seeing Jeff Gluck's race poll, at the time of doing my notes for the podcast, 87% said it was a good race. So I thought it was going to be a little bit more controversial on the poll. It seemed like the drivers, more of the drivers didn't like the race and the style of racing than the ones that did. But as a race fan, I think personally that this is one of the best races I've watched in a long time. Bristol seems to produce these style of races, and with the tire issues that we saw yesterday, it was exciting just because you didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, tires, they were definitely a ticking time bomb. I was kind of surprised that, like you just said, see the engagement from all the fans and kind of survey on whether or not they thought it was good. I thought it was good. It was super enjoyable. I mean, it was just nonstop action. I mean, after the first stage, we could really see the intense tire wear. I mean, there was pictures and videos of guys' tires after stage one. I mean, the inside of the tire was separating, the cords were all frayed, coming out of the tire in large sections. And, following stage one, I think the drivers kind of, seemed to take it a little bit more easy, kind of preserve their tires, trying to, learn. It was kind of a learning experience for everyone. I mean, we really never seen tire wear like this before. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. And then, tire wear is good. I mean, it's definitely good. It helps show what guys can manage the tires the best. Now, maybe a little bit extreme Bristol was, maybe a little bit, maybe tone it down just a hair, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, I would say. Although it doesn't seem like anyone really has any idea to how it ended up happening, to this extent.
Right.
But one thing is, I hope Goodyear doesn't go polar opposite for the next Bristol race and, get a tire that's super hard and just, completely different where there's no tire wear. Um, I know the Goodyear director, he did say that this was the same same package, same tire that we had in the fall race, and that was completely different. There's talks of the resin and the PJ1. There was PJ1 distributed at the fall race last year during the delay. There was resin today. They didn't feel the need to put the PJ1 down. I don't know. It was definitely crazy, enjoyable. Surprised Lars was able to get a top five finish after all that mayhem. But ultimately it was a good race. P5 finish. You can't complain about that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot to unpack here, and the tires being the biggest part of that. Like you said, the tires haven't changed. A lot of people were saying that it was a different tire, but it wasn't. It was the same tire that NASCAR and Goodyear brought in the fall last year. That um, it just completely brought out a different racing product. And you alluded to the PJ1 versus the resin that was down on the race yesterday, and I kind of joked about it on Twitter. I was tweeting live during the race that on the radio I thought Kyle Larson was actually joking about stopping and red flagging the race and putting down the PJ1, but he was serious. He wanted them to stop the race, and he said it again later on that he wanted them to stop the race and spray the PJ1 on the track. I mean, to me, I don't think that that's necessary. I'm even kind of on the side of where NASCAR gave all the teams an extra set of tires for the race. Was that really necessary? I mean, it's the same playing field for everyone. So is it you're given 10 sets of tires or 11 or whatever? I think they were given 10 from the start and then ended up with 11 with the extra set. But it's the same for everybody. So who's going to manage their tires the best? Who's going to, use their scuffs at the right time? We saw Kyle in the 5 team put on right side only scuffs prior to the end of stage 2 to try and not use fresh tires. So a lot of different variables in play, but I think one thing we did see for sure was by the end of the race, a lot of the drivers had figured it out a little bit better. I mean, that last long run that we had, Kyle made his tires last longer than anybody on the final run of the race and came home fifth and ultimately the last car on the lead lap.
Yeah, I would say about 50 laps to go-ish. We kind of saw some issues. That's kind of the guys started dropping. A lot of the tires were giving out. Lots of guys just driving, kind of pushing as far as they could without pitting, hoping for a yellow. But ultimately the tires just weren't really holding up. And I mean, you can kind of gauge. I mean, like I said, after the first stage, you could really, see what drivers were kind of figuring out and trying to, see what was best for them. And then you have the drivers like Denny Hamlin who won the race. I mean, he said, a big part of that was growing up the style of racing he did in the late models. That's, a big aspect of racing late models is the tire wear, the tire management. You saw veterans, I mean, Truex, Keselowski, I mean, those guys, they ended up racking up good finishes. They were able to manage their tires and, ultimately they came up on top and, there was only 5 cars that finished on the lead lap, which is crazy. I mean, we saw that. We saw the Larson penalty that put him back to the rear. I think that was around 380, that lap 380 or so. He that restart, he kind of got up a little bit, started to fade. Cliff brought him back for tires with 66 to go, and it ended up cycling out perfectly. I mean, he ended
Yeah.
up finishing, fifth, 3 laps down. That was kind of a crazy comeback. Not really sure how that, ended up, but
Well,
obviously ended up pretty good.
Well, yeah, on that sequence where he ended up being 3 laps down, the tire was coming apart and Cliff just made it seemed like the split-second decision to say, "Hey, we're gonna bring him down pit road right now. We're gonna put 4 tires on it. It's our last set, and we're gonna go and see do what we can do." And when they put that set of tires on, man, I wish I could play the in-car camera on here on the podcast now to show everyone if you weren't watching it, but that was the most insane thing I've ever seen in a NASCAR race in my time of watching NASCAR, because it looked like everybody else was literally running pace lap speed around the track as Kyle was weaving in and out, bottom, top, just trying to get through the traffic. And even Kyle said on the radio, he was just like, "This is crazy." Like it was just, he was so much faster than everybody else there at the end, or there on the beginning of that last run, having the fresh tires. And it almost made me think about it like, what if they just risked it and pitted like 5 or 6 laps sooner? Maybe he could have made the tires last a little bit longer, got a little bit more of that advantage of pitting sooner. Maybe would have brought some other guys down pit road sooner as well. But what would it have been like? I mean, I don't even know if he would have finished fifth if he didn't get the penalty. I think it's just interesting how it all played out there at the end, where we saw him kind of take advantage of it, and then Bowman finished what, third or fourth. He also kind of took advantage of that whole last sequence too. So, um, I think that it was, for me, looking at Larson's comments after the race, I was kind of surprised that he said that he never has to run a race like that again. And in my opinion, a race like that, the guys like Larson, the guys like Hamlin, the guys like Truex that are good at managing their stuff, they're going to be the ones that come out on top. And, the fifth place finish reflects that. I think he was confused by the fifth place finish, but he did a badass job driving the car.
Yeah, he definitely seemed a little confused in the interviews. Like I have no idea how we ended up cycling through, finishing fifth. But like you said, if not for that penalty, I know a lot of people were kind of, talking about that. I mean, I didn't even see it. Did you see a clip of it? Because I know it got Cliff Daniels kind of, challenged NASCAR about it.
Yeah, so looking back on the clip, I did watch the clip of the penalty after the fact, and basically what happened was it was an equipment interference penalty. So the right front tire, when they were taking off the old right front tire, they pushed it towards the pit wall where the guy standing on the wall usually receives that tire. And the tire exited the five's pit box into the 15 car, who was a pitting right ahead of the five. And the rear tire changer on that car came around the back of the car. It hit him just barely, and then that results in a penalty. But the reason Cliff was kind of trying to challenge the penalty is because at the time that the 15's rear tire changer touched the tire, he was actually standing in the five car's pit box. So I guess I don't know if there. I don't know the official ruling on that from NASCAR. If the guys standing in not their own pit box, if that causes it to not be a penalty at that point, or what happens necessarily. But it was interesting. I think it's one of those ones where you know I would like to know what the official ruling would have been if NASCAR. I don't know. It's just it's a weird one, but the thing about it is with how many pit stops happened during that race, 11, 12 pit stops, something crazy is bound to happen, Dylan. I mean, you feel bad for the pit crew, and um, they came into that race not expecting to have to pit that many times for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if not for that penalty, we might have finished, stayed laps down. We probably wouldn't have, you know, maybe not finished with the top 5 finish. So, it just kind of everything worked out in our favor. And, with putting those tires on with 66 laps to go, perfect time for him. I mean, the tires, I'm pretty sure they only lasted about 60, 70 laps max. I mean, there at the end, like Ty Gibbs, when he got the flat tire, that's kind of, the life of the tire was around that 70-ish lap mark. So kind of just worked out perfectly for Larson. Kind of, at the end, like you said, Bowman, he finished fourth, Larson fifth. The Chevys really didn't look super strong, until we got those finishes in the last sequence. So, all in all, a very interesting race. Like I said earlier, I just hope Goodyear doesn't, go to the polar opposite end and get a tire that doesn't have any wear, because that would result in even worse racing. I mean, this type of racing is exciting. Glad to have Bristol back. I mean, first time
Yeah.
since 2020 in the spring race, and we get this race. So it's definitely cool to see. And I'm sure they're going to test before the fall race. I'm sure they're going to test another tire and kind of figure it out and see if they can prevent some of the wear, because I mean, the track just didn't rubber up at all. I mean, it was just completely different from the fall race. Now, I mentioned last week, with the night race being night, this was the first day race
Right.
at Bristol, 4 years. So I don't know if that really
Well, really, in
plays.
the next gen car, the first day race
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
next gen car.
Yeah, I mean, Larson hasn't raced there, with even Hendrick Motorsports,
Yeah.
in the spring until yesterday. So, I don't know really if that had a huge play. I know the sun wasn't out, very, very much yesterday, but I'm not sure. I'm interested to see kind of what they do with the whole PJ1 and resin thing as well. If that's something they can manage moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that NASCAR and Goodyear could go about this, but I think one thing is for sure is that the fans, the majority of the fans love the race. I think the unpredictability factor of it was kind of cool to see, like the teams have to react. It wasn't necessarily like all planned out. I honestly like it more so than a race like a super speedway. For instance, a super speedway race, the inevitable. There's gonna be crashes. You're gonna be riding around for a long time waiting for that to happen, and you hope you're in the right place at the right time. It's a lot of luck involved with it in super speedway racing. But racing like this, where it comes down to tire strategy and how much you save, it really boils down to, yes, it's a surprise at the beginning of the race. They thought the track was going to take a lot more rubber and that tire wear was going to decrease throughout the race. But it's all about who can adapt, who can overcome that throughout the race. It's not about luck. Everybody's dealt basically the same hand. And, we saw, movers and shakers throughout the race. And I think if they ran this race again this weekend at Bristol, same exact situation, same scenario, everybody has the notebook that they have now. I think a lot of teams would do better. They would be able to manage tires. They'd be able to go longer on a run, and you would possibly see a much different outcome. I think you would see a lot more cars on the lead lap. Um, it would just be a completely different race. So I think NASCAR should take the good and say, hey, we need to have something similar to this in the fall, where there is some tire wear that's going to be playing a factor. It's going to make drivers really challenged in the race, but also not to the point where it becomes a safety issue, or it's you've got guys that are riding around half pace because they don't want to blow a tire or they're scared. I mean, we saw some guys like that yesterday too, where when it got to that 50 lap range, they slowed down the pace so much that it was like, are they even trying to race? Are they even making minimum speed out there? So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the fall. But I think for fans, it's a positive because we have two of the best races this year, Atlanta and Bristol. We're going to see them again in the playoffs, so that's good to see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in the playoffs for sure. I can't think of the exact number of lead changes that Bristol had yesterday, but I saw that it was up there for a record, and in like the tandem era, I think it was Talladega. So I mean, that many lead changes in a short track race. I mean, a half-mile track. It's very cool to see, and you kind of have a hard time telling, what guy is the fastest car. I mean, we did see Ty Gibbs. He won the first two stages. He was up there at the end till he blew a tire, but for the most part, there was just so many lead changes and guys moving in and out. I mean, you could have a guy top five and 10 laps later, I mean, they're all the way in the back of the field just because their tires are just not holding up. And it's very cool to see. It makes things interesting, kind of puts you on the edge of your seat, not knowing what to expect. But, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see moving forward, how they play this out. And then, even looking at other short tracks, I mean,
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest downfalls of this next gen so far is the product of racing on the short tracks. Will they kind of, take a step similar to Bristol, have a super soft tire? I don't know if it, the surface. I mean, there's a lot of variables that come into play, but maybe just bringing a tire that has tons of tire wear, maybe bring out a better product of racing for those tracks that are typically not putting on good races. But we will see moving forward, what NASCAR, what Goodyear will decide. All in all, I do think it should be, you know, lowered down a little bit. I think it was a little bit extreme yesterday, but definitely a step in the right direction.
yeah, I would totally love to see this kind of something similar to this be applied to Phoenix or applied to Martinsville or something like that, where you see some more tire wear and guys are struggling out there. I mean, and I think a lot of fans side with the drivers when it comes down to their opinions at the end of the race. I know, I like to think of things like from their side, their view as well. But of course the drivers are going to be pissed off. Of course they're not going to like it because they're the ones that are out there for 500 laps struggling. I mean, they struggled all race long to just try and keep the thing going around there. So, you saw guys like Kyle Busch had a horrible day. I mean, tons of problems the whole day. He's not going to have a very good opinion of that race, but he also wasn't the guy sitting in the stands watching it, taking it in. And he wasn't the guy who won. The guy who won has a different opinion as well. So, I like I said, I love to see this and see what this does for the sport moving forward. But kind of speaking of Ty Gibbs, you mentioned him. He did a good job in the race yesterday. He'll be running next week alongside with Kyle Larson in the double duty at Circuit of the Americas in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So that's going to be an interesting race on Saturday this weekend. In with Ty Gibbs and Larson, we've seen some good battles between them in the Xfinity Series races the past couple years. I didn't know Ty was running this race until today, but now seeing him on the entry list too, it's like that's going to be Kyle's probably toughest competition because we know how good Ty is in that Xfinity car.
Yeah, what was the one road course that it was super close between them? Was it last year?
Oh man, I
I
don't.
can't think of which one it was. It was like a super close like battle for the end of the
Yeah, I
race.
want to say it was it at Sonoma or I can't remember, but
I can't remember.
yeah, I mean they've had some really good ones and Kyle's going to be quick in that 17 car. We've seen it have super good pace with him behind the wheel as always, but he's going to have to race his way in. He's going to have to qualify for this race. There's 40 cars competing for 38 spots. I saw, I don't know what the situation would be if qualifying were to get rained out, if he would be ahead of two other cars, if that were to be the case. I saw there's some rain, it looks like, on Thursday in the Austin, Texas area, but Friday looks clear as of now. So hopefully we get to get qualifying in, and he's able to put the car in the show, and then from there it's really just putting down laps and finding the rhythm.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a change of pace, after this week. I mean, the mayhem at Bristol, hopefully, team's good to go. Kind of, put that behind them, and then following Circuit of the Americas, you got Richmond and Martinsville. Two short tracks. Like I just mentioned, it would be kind of be interesting to see, how they play with in terms of tire and improving that. But looking forward to Circuit of the Americas. Double 2 days in a row, we could see Kyle extending it in Cup. Always fun to see. Hopefully, we can pick up the weekend sweep. It would be pretty cool, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then obviously even further looking ahead past the next couple of NASCAR Cup Series races, finally getting back on dirt at Riverside International Speedway with the High Limit Sprint Car Series on April 9th. That is the beginning of the Midweek Money Series that Kyle is the defending champion of from 2023. And then it's getting hot and heavy into the IndyCar stuff. The Indy 500 season begins on April 10th and 11th with the Indy 500 Open test. 2 days to kind of open up the Indianapolis 500 and Kyle's first time on track with other cars. So looking forward to that as well. Lots of big stuff on the schedule. We're kind of getting out of this little bit of a dead period, I would say, for Kyle's racing these first couple months of the season where there's not a lot of dirt, but definitely as the weeks go on, that stuff's going to ramp up, and you know just how crazy that gets going into the summer.
Yeah, I was gonna say those Indy tests, those are gonna be pretty interesting because I mean everything he's ran to this point, just pretty much been himself on track, kind of learning the ins and outs of things, and that's gonna be kind of his first chance at drafting with other cars, feeling the car, through traffic and the speed changes. So that's gonna be cool. Gonna see his times for that and see how he will be. Really looking forward to the Indy 500. That's gonna be really cool seeing him in that. The Coke 600 Memorial Day weekend. Really gonna be exciting. Looking forward to that. Hoping I can make it out to Charlotte. Would love to be able to hit that. You're hitting the 500. Would be cool to make the Coke 600. Kind of make a join video. Monitoring Kyle's a day from Indy 500 to Coke 600. So looking forward to it. Gonna be really big and be a big month. For Kyle and everyone obviously leave your opinions on this video, talking about Bristol and any event that's coming up that you're excited for, anything you're looking forward to. And yeah, be sure to leave it in the comments of the YouTube video or Instagram, Twitter, anything, any platform you may use.
Absolutely, and kind of just one little last side note about the Indy 500. Everybody should be looking forward to that qualifying session because the track the speed record at Indy is at stake here for this race. They're expecting for a new track record maybe to be set with this car this year. Obviously, the reason for that being they've kind of prepared this car for the new hybrid engine in the Indy car, and that did not end up happening for this year. It was supposed to, but I think the car actually is a little bit lighter than what it was last year for the 500. So potentially track record at stake. I think they actually set a new track record in the first race of the IndyCar season at St. Pete. So going to be cool to see that if maybe Kyle Larson could go out there and set the track record. That'd be pretty cool. First time in the IndyCar.
Yeah,
Be the
they're
speed
gonna need
record
a
holder.
we're gonna need to hear like a quick time Kyle Larson
Yeah,
there
we
on
need
the
to get Johnny
broadcast.
Gibson out of the
Yeah.
at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. No, but looking forward to that and the next couple of weeks for Kyle's racing. Of course, we'll wrap up today's show with our Kyle Larson race of the week. Last week's race came from 2011, and this week's race also from the year 2011. On November 24th, 2011, at Irwindale Speedway. Actually, the Turkey Night Grand Prix for the USAC Midget Series, but when the event was on pavement. So that event was on pavement and switched to dirt, and Kyle raced in it that year. And if you followed along with our coverage of the Turkey Night Grand Prix the past couple of years, Kyle is really good in that event, and he did double duty on that night, running in the pavement sprint car and the pavement midget. He finished fourth in the midget and then 19th in the sprint car. I was looking hard to try and find some video from that night, but couldn't find anything out there. 2011, a little bit old, but if anybody watching this has the video, has anything from that night, kind of put a link down in the YouTube version of the podcast and share it with us, because I'd be interested to see that race. But Dylan, unless you had anything else for today's show, I think that's just about it.
Yeah, we've been getting some old races.
I
Well,
know.
last week was 2011 too, right?
Yeah, no, and like I said last week, I literally just all the races that I have in my spreadsheet, I just put them all in a random number generator, you know, whatever 2007 through 2023, and it just picks a year, and then from there I just pick the number race from that year, and it just happened to be 2011 again. And we finally got out of the month of September, because we had like 4 weeks in a row of it being in September. So we're out of that. Now we just got to go to something a little bit newer maybe next week.
Yeah, I was gonna say hopefully we get something soon that someone can actually remember and,
Yeah,
and
I know.
kind of
Well,
have an opinion about.
Well, it sucks when we don't have the video for it too, because I mean, I feel like if it's an old race and we have at least a video to link and show everybody, then it's interesting to go back and look at it, because you're like, oh, I've never seen this before. It's but on the ones where you can't even watch it, it's kind of boring. So we'll try and do better next week. I don't know. Hope you guys are enjoying the random Kyle Larson race of the week segment.
We might have to start rigging the random number generator, not make it so random
If we get a
from
bad
here
one, we'll
on
just
out.
re-roll, right?
Yeah,
Just no, I don't like that one.
just like in fantasy football, if I get a bad pick this year, if I get last again, we might have to rig it. I need a good pick this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was your draft. Your draft selections didn't pan out. Garrett
Oh, is that
Wilson,
right?
yeah, Aaron Rodgers didn't help you out
Yeah.
too much there. But uh enough of that. NFL free agency kind of ramped up and went as we over the past week, but we appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening to the show as always. We'll be back again next week to recap Coda, Kyle racing in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series. And if there's any other news that comes about, we will have it here on Larsonland. If you are watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow our podcast so you never miss a thing. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we will see you in the next episode.